Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of Executive. I'm Councillor Claire Douglas and I'm leader of the Council, and Executive is one of the main decision-making bodies of the Council. It's Thursday the 18th of July and it's 4:30 p.m. So we have a really busy agenda today and a lot of public speakers as well. So if you could please move around the room as efficiently as we possibly can, because otherwise we could be here till about 10, I would say, but hopefully not. So first of all then, going to the agenda, apologies. So we have apologies from Councillor Eyre, and Councillor Fenton is attending in his stead today. So welcome, Councillor Fenton. Thanks for joining us. Councillor Fenton isn't a voting member of the executive. He's here as an opposition observer, but can contribute to the meeting as well. So if you want to speak at any point, please indicate. Next item on the agenda that we have here is item number 1, declarations of interest. Does anybody have any declarations of interest that they need to make public? No, we have no declarations of interest today. The next item that we have is the exclusion of press and public. And this is to consider the exclusion of the press and public from the meeting during consideration of the following. It's agenda item 13, Annex A, and Annexes G and H of agenda item 15. So this is on the grounds that they contain information relating to financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. And this information is classed as exempt under paragraph 3 of Schedule 12A, section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, as revised by the Local Government Access to Information Variation Order 2006. So can I see those in favour of excluding press and public for those items, please? Thank you. So that is agreed. And actually, before we move on from that, I want us to consider that we have just agreed to exclude press and public from agenda item number 15. And due to Councillor Pavlovic needing to leave the meeting promptly, we've agreed also to move it up the agenda, that item. Usually I would save all exclusions of press and public to the end of the meeting, but that's not going to be possible to do today. So I will warn folks that when I get to considering items 14 and 15 that actually will come in after item 8, then on item 15 I will have to ask those who are in the public gallery there to leave us for that section, but then you can come back in. So if you are staying, I apologise now, but it's unavoidable today. So thank you for your understanding with that. Item number 3 is minutes, and that's to approve and sign the minutes of the executive meeting held on the 13th of June 2024. Can I see those in favour of accepting those as a fair reflection of the meeting? Yep, so that's unanimous. Thank you, everybody, for that. Our next item is public participation. And so we have 9 speakers today. Our maximum capacity is 10 speakers, and Councillor Fenton was one of those 10 who is now sat at the table here. So he is no longer on the public speaker list. So it does mean we've gone down to 9, and we did have more people that wanted to speak today, but we have had some written representations as well. So just for those that are watching, I apologise for the fact that we're not at maximum capacity, and we hoped to be able to do that, but the time frames didn't allow us some of the additional, or one of the additional speakers. And also, just for everybody's benefit, because there are 6 people who couldn't take up a public speaking slot with us today, that some of them have submitted written representations. And due to time constraints, we're not going to read those out either, because that would really extend the 30 minutes that we allow for public participation on this already packed agenda. But all executive members have had those written representations, have been able to see them. So getting on with the public participation section, the first speaker is Flick Williams, and she's joining us remotely. So Flick, can you hear us?
Yes, good afternoon.
Hello, thanks for that. And so you have 3 minutes, and you don't want me to give you a 30-second warning, do you?
No, thank you.
No. Right, please go ahead.
Whilst today you rubber stamp this transport strategy, in reality you have been applying it for some time, often to the detriment of disabled people. I cite the removal of their parking from disabled Queen Street residents. Since pre-decision scrutiny, the latest active travel horror show has been unveiled at the junction of Foss Islands and Navigation Road. This scheme is the absolute anathema to all principles of inclusive design. It requires all pedestrians, including those with sensory or mobility impairments, to walk through an effective no man's land where cyclists will cross both in front and behind them from both directions. There is no requirement anywhere for cyclists to give way to pedestrians, and they don't. Some now using the pedestrian crossing to cross onto the far side pavement only to continue their journey. Disabled people write to me, they don't know where the safe cyclist-free space is. They don't know because now there isn't one. Our complaints are responded to with "it will be reviewed." Will that be like the bus stop bypass on Tadcaster Road, perhaps, which is coming up for its anniversary of being under review? I surmise this is because no one knows what to do to fix it, as it is so fundamentally flawed, and would bet that this will be exactly the same. So please tell me, if you can, how, as more of these schemes are built and more disabled people say they now avoid their area altogether because they feel unsafe, how exactly that fits with the objective to shape a city that is accessible to everyone. The ableism is being built in. Non-disabled people say, oh, it's fine, it will work because that area has a low volume of people. Well, to me, that is the very definition of failure. If a scheme only functions with minimal use when the stated goal is a high volume of walking, cycling and bus use. You have spent freely on engaging consultancies to work on this. Disabled people who took part in the MEMA workshops were constrained in their comments to specific areas of inquiry and were then told if they didn't say it, it didn't count. And those of us who actually understand the social model angered to learn that respondents were broken down into impairment categories, which is entirely inappropriate. But no money for the work on bus accessibility, which tells me we're not so serious about that. Section 1.4 says to increase the amount of accessible seating on buses when it is about so very much more, including all aspects of vehicle design, infrastructure and operation. But despite the Equalities Impact Assessment that shows a total misunderstanding of human rights articles, you're covering yourselves. The PJA consultancy report concludes with, backlash is a positive sign that meaningful changes are being made. No, here it is a sign that you are failing yet again to meet the public sector equality duty. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Flick, and they will be considered, and I think the executive member for transport will either comment on them later on the item in question or get back to you. Thank you very much. The next person to speak is Councillor Ben Burton, and that's on the local transport strategy. So Councillor Burton, if you can come to the table, you have 3 minutes. Would you like 30-second warning? No. Okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. It's great to come to an agenda pack full of so many exciting decisions. I think it's a tribute to the positive direction that the executive and officers are taking things today. But I'm aware you have a lot on, so I'm going to try and be quick to rattle through this. So I'm here today to speak in support of the local transport plan item, and also to make some specific asks in relation to this. It's absolutely vital that the plan and movement and place plan move forward quickly. Our historic city simply doesn't have the capacity for a private car dominated model of transport. The only way we're going to get the city moving is by moving towards mass transit models alongside significant increases in walking and wheeling. This will not only help everyone get around quicker, but it also helps more widely with health, air quality, and making sure that the roads are clear for those who do genuinely need to be driving on them. It's also vital we do this to meet our climate commitments. We've recently had confirmation that we've had 12 months above 1.5C globally. The type of interventions proposed in the Movement in Place plan should have been happening under the last two administrations, so we have no time to lose in taking these forward. I want to raise two specific asks around transport while I'm here. Number one is to expand 20-mile-per-hour zones in the city. The early feedback from Wales' rollout of this is hugely positive, despite the efforts of some media outlets to state otherwise. Significantly less vehicle collisions, increased cycling confidence, and minimal impact on travel times in urban areas. In Heworth, I've already made the request to highways officers that at a minimum we want to introduce 20-mile-per-hour limits to Tanghall Lane and Melrose Gate, which are hotspots for accidents and need urgent attention. I hope the executive member can make that happen for us. And secondly, to review and expand resident parking across the city, along with general parking arrangements in the city, so that we can use that as a tool to mitigate car dependency, because we cannot continue to support people driving into the city centre as we go forwards. So overall, very happy to support the transport plan and hope you're all moving forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. And once again, your comments will be considered under that item. And we will get back to you as well. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Anthony May, and he also wants to speak on the transport strategy, and he is part of York Civic Trust. So you have 3 minutes. Would you like 30 seconds? Okay, you're absolutely fine. Please go ahead then. Thank you.
Thank you. As you say, I'm speaking on behalf of York Civic Trust, and we warmly welcome the Council's new local transport strategy with its clear vision for the future of transport in York, its challenging but we think necessary objectives, and its clear articulation of the actions that are needed. It's now 3.5 years since we were first invited by the Council to advise on what was going to be a 2021 local transport plan. Our role throughout that period has been to provide advice on what can be learned from cities elsewhere in terms of good practice, cities in the UK and cities elsewhere in Europe. And we put together our own proposals based on that in 2022. We're delighted at last to see the results of these efforts and are very pleased to see that the Council has adopted many of the proposals which we put forward in 2022. We've two remaining concerns. The first relates to targets. The Council strategy still does not make clear its targets for 2030 and 2040. And now this is a plan for 2040. The only targets mentioned are those related to the climate strategy. And even there, the statement of a 20% reduction in car use is stated boldly without any clear indication of why it's needed. We also think that we need clear targets for both 2030 and 2040 for air quality, for health, for safety, and for accessibility. And we need those so that members of the public and businesses can see the benefits of the changes in behaviour which the Council is pressing for. So we really would like to see those articulated as soon as possible. Secondly, the strategy rightly refers to people's passion for improving transport, the need for a radical and bold approach, and that there is no time to lose. And yet the first 5-year implementation plan, now seems to have been deferred till December. By then, it will be fully 4 years since we were first invited to contribute, and crucially, it will be too late for action to use funding in this financial year. It's difficult for us to understand why the implementation plan has been deferred for so long, because as we understand it, a lot of it's already been written. We strongly encourage you as the executive to require a first-year action plan by September, and to seek the implementation plan in full for 5 years by October.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much. Very well timed. Thank you for your comments, Tony, and we will certainly take a look at those in relation to the document that we currently have. The next person is Mr. Andy de Gorn, and he also wants to speak on the local transport strategy. So would you like me to give you 30-second warning? Andy, yeah, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. York Green Party welcomes the significant progress addressing the urgent need to tackle congestion and pollution, rescue our precarious bus services from spiralling into decline, and following through on the cross-party support for the 10-year strategies for climate change, economy and health adopted in 2022. Reports today are particularly welcome, adopting a clear vision and pathway through movement and place plan framework referenced against proven best practice from comparator cities with similar challenges and traffic reduction targets. This will be vital to decouple new development from the greater use of private cars and consequent congestion. As Tony has just pointed out, the Civic Trust produced an excellent model over 2 years ago, which is largely consistent with the current approach recommended today. However, they have made clear the importance of regular targets and benchmarks against which to measure the impact of each specific measure, something so far still missing from the strategy. We now need to see progress at pace. This positive outcome from the transport conversation, the positive tone of the reports, the new Labour government, Labour mayor and 2 Labour MPs should surely mean no reason for us to delay. Notably, vital bus priority measures are needed using the government BSIP funding allocated in 2022, and we should be inviting the public to comment on the draft cycling and walking infrastructure plan sat on the shelf since January this year. Also, the MEMA report, City Centre Access report, is very welcome, maintaining a focus on this vital issue. Welcome the recommendations to address access for disabled people who use the cycle as a mobility aid, and also the continued focus on improving shop mobility, seating, drop curbs and blue badge parking, much of which was already planned well over a year ago. Finally, it's a real shame that there's scant reference in the report to the trialling of the free shuttle bus or restoring of a dial-a-ride service that so many people relied on. All the more surprising given the cross-party commitment to the social model of disability, when these could help provide better inclusive access for a wide range of elderly and disabled people, whether residents or visitors.
Oh, that's it. Thank you. I was just going to tell you had 20 seconds left. So thank you for that. And thanks for your comments. And again, they'll be considered when we get to that item. The next person that we have on the list is Mr. Christian Santa Barbara, and that also is on the transport strategy. And Christian is representing GMB York. So welcome, Christian. Please take a seat. And we have, oh, no, she's not coming to, she's taking photos. Okay, thank you very much. You have 3 minutes. Would you like a 30-second warning? Yes. Okay, thank you. Off you go.
Like that? Yeah. Hi. Thank you very much for the invite here today. As said, I'm here today speaking on behalf of my many courier cyclist members in the North East Yorkshire Humber GMB region and in York. We were happy to read the reports and the annexes published by the Transport Executive, and we thank them for their balanced and commendable approach to the topic. It's exciting to think that one day in my lifetime, York will have a joined up transport system. We welcome the objectives of the strategy, especially those around air quality and the reduction of congestion and vehicle dominance. They're very good. We want to take this opportunity to speak in full support of the transport strategy as it stands. We also want to express our commitment to working with stakeholder groups to co-design a city and space that works safely and effectively for everybody. In preparation of the future reports to come that specify the particular plans and schemes that bring the strategy to life, I need the executive to be cognizant that our courier cyclists in the city are key workers and vulnerable road users. It is our mission to deliver groceries, medicines and hot food to York's citizens, including those with additional considerations wherein we serve as a critical link for those people. Beyond that, our couriers are local residents and they're also council taxpayers. We want York to be built fit for a green future, and our campaign for cyclists in that inclusion is incredibly strong. The executive should be aware that our petition for a cycle route through the city centre hit near 700 signatures. This is comparative to the 1,300 online respondents who took part in the Our Big Transport conversation online. As well as the support, it's obvious in today's city centre that businesses and other couriers do not want to transition to green modes of pedal cycle transport because they are at risk doing so. Our outdated traffic order that is not fit for a digitally empowered city penalises us every day, and the infrastructure built around cars promotes road traffic collisions. Moreover, families and commuters do not want to use York's cycle network because they fear being injured and potentially killed on the roads. And feeling unsafe and being criminalised are not good incentives to reduce carbon emissions and realise our new strategy. So the planet needs better and we need better. And I hope today is the first step toward a greener, safer, more inclusive and fair York. We look forward to the coming reports. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christian, and thanks for your comments, and we will take them into consideration along with everybody else's on that particular item. The seventh person who wants to speak today is Councillor Jason Rose, and he wants to speak on the Acomb Front Street paper. 30. So you have 3 minutes, Jason. Would you like a 30-second warning? Yes. Okay, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you for the huge amount of public engagement on the Front Street improvements. I really want to thank officers for their colossal efforts in trying to find the perfect balanced compromise of opinions while leaving future additional work open. It feels that we're a little boxed in by spend and timeframes in this phase, so I hope that we emerge with a singular overall long-term vision based on public engagement and then get enough money and time to bring it to full fruition in one final phase. But I'm genuinely excited for next Easter and seeing how different it will be. I'd also like to celebrate the great work put into the movement in place framework and local transport strategy and other parts of these mammoth papers, over 1,000 pages of important content. I'd like to ask for two things. I really want to urge exec that the transport consultation flows through councillors into local residents, as I know Acomb residents want more discussions about these kinds of options across the whole area. And on the mayoral key routes network, Acomb residents have a real challenge for inconsistent cycling routes, infrastructure and air quality, including Boroughbridge Road and Water End Bridge. Maintaining and improving those roads will become even harder with many more houses being built in the area. Option 3 retains more council control. So my second ask is to please think about the long-lasting effects of whatever you decide today for our local residents. You've also received a full statement and questions from the What a Load of Bollards campaign group, but allow me to repeat some of it to ask for comment today. What a heck of a lot of time, energy, and of course money has been spent over what remains one very small street with one very simple problem, which is still a silly road dividing a potentially lovely community shopping and meeting space for absolutely no purpose. It is not needed for access and saves drivers no time, reflected in the fact that it is closed to cars for most of the day. The planners have worked unbelievably hard to try to achieve the impossible, a scheme that will keep everyone happy. They say they want an open space where people can move freely to shop, meet and talk, but you can never achieve this in an area split down the middle by a road. As we reach these final discussions, the loudest collective voice we hear now is the call for pedestrianisation. Instead of real progress, such as filling in the road and restricting traffic to deliveries and disabled drivers only, as we've been asking from day one, the team have focused on all kinds of ingenious ways to disguise the fact that it's a road at all. But painting it a different colour and replacing the detested bollards with benches and bins still produces a divide and a barrier. At the ward meeting, we were told that £10,000 has been set aside to apply for a legal change of use to pedestrianisation of Front Street. We ask for a public commitment to this with a timescale and how it will proceed. For now, could you please consider removing the parking areas, which result in cars often remaining throughout the day when it is closed, or restrict those parking areas to delivery and disabled drivers only? Thank you very much all for thinking strategically when running our city. And thank you very much for your time today.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for those comments, and they'll certainly be considered when we look at that item later today. Do we have Councillor Coles? No, so our eighth speaker was going to be Councillor Coles, and unfortunately she's not been able to join us remotely. The next person that we have is Lynette Mills, who is from York Cycle Campaign. and she would also like to talk to us about the local transport strategy. Lynette, you have 3 minutes. Would you like a 30-second warning?
No, I'm
You're
fine,
okay. Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Statement on behalf of the York Cycle Campaign. We welcome the final version of York's local transport strategy. This provides a sound foundation for planning York's future transport provision, where active travel and public transport are given the attention they deserve in order to reduce congestion and pollution, ensure road safety, increase health and well-being, and improve equality and community. We welcome the MIMA report on city centre access. In particular, we commend the report's identification of the need to ensure that disabled cyclists have access to the foot streets, which they are currently excluded from, and the recognition of the value of a north-south cycle route through the city centre, as championed by the campaign. We urge the Council to take swift action on both these points. We welcome the report on the movement and place framework, which provides an attractive vision of what York could achieve if it prioritises people over vehicles. We urge the Council to instruct officers to progress a movement and place plan that is aligned with the highest levels of commitment and ambition set out in the document. The strategy and associated reports are encouraging in their tone, but as we have stated before, the proof will be in the delivery. We will therefore await the LTS implementation plan and local cycling and walking infrastructure plan with interest, and a desire to see the strategy translated into ambitious targets and concrete actions that can deliver the level of change that is required. We also urge the Council not to delay and to take action now to improve provision for cyclists on the ground. Quick wins should include, as already noted, better city centre access for the cyclist, immediate removal of problematic barriers, addressing missing links on the existing cycle network, introducing 20-mile-an-hour speed limits on key cycling routes, a two-way cycle access on all one-way streets, and improvements to the cycle parking. We are concerned to note that the Air Quality Action Plan 4 does not appear to align well with the ambitions set out in the local transport strategy. In particular, the emphasis is on weak enforcement measures and switching to electric vehicles, which still produce dangerous particulate pollution from tires and brakes. Far greater improvements in air quality would be achieved more cheaply by increasing active travel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for those comments. And yeah, we have a lot to think about, don't we, on the local transport strategy. Thank you, Lynette. And then finally, we have Mr. Graham Collette, and he is also going to speak on the local transport strategy, and he is here on behalf of York Bus Forum. So Graham, you have 3 minutes. Would you like me to give you a 30-minute,
yes,
sorry, 30-second warning?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
York Bus Forum strongly supports the Council's decision to proceed with a new local transport strategy. We appreciate the effort which has been made to carry out as wide a consultation as practicable. We welcome the Council's vision to provide all areas of the city with good and reliable public transport access as set out in Policy Focus Area 4. Policies 4.1 to 4.10 will be essential to meet this vision. Policy 4.1 calls for the Council to, quote, work with bus operators to create a comprehensive network of bus services accessible to as many residents and visitors as possible, and providing services at weekends and for the nighttime economy. It is clear to us that it is very unlikely it will be possible to achieve this desired network commercially. The Council is already fully funding a service which was run commercially, and the future for other routes run wholly or partially commercially is uncertain. We therefore recommend that the Council gives urgent consideration to alternative models of service provision, such as franchising. There are now various options for this, other than a complete area scheme. The strategy confirms that one of the main issues affecting bus service reliability is traffic congestion. This is a particular problem where vehicles are using the city centre as a through route. We therefore support the proposal in policy 4.2 for a dedicated priority route for buses and other sustainable transport as part of the movement and place plan across the city centre. Recent cutbacks in commercial bus services have highlighted the need for elderly and disabled residents to be provided with a service which does not involve a long walk to the nearest bus stop. The situation has been made much worse since the ending of the former dial-a-ride service. We therefore fully support the recommendations of the EPAT Scrutiny Committee that the Council should, as soon as possible, take steps to ensure the provision of a community transport service which would fulfil these currently unmet needs. Policy 4.3 supports this proposal and also asks that a shuttle bus in the Foot Streets area of the city centre should be again considered. Given the time and effort already spent on the shuttle bus proposal, it is important that the work on this is progressed. Policy 4.6 requires the redesign of the railway station to make it more sustainable. We remain concerned about the capacity of the proposed bus stops to cater for the future needs of bus users and await a long delayed meeting with the council to resolve this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Graham. And those comments will be considered under that item as well. So thank you for your participation today. Right, that is the end of our public participation section. So thank you to everybody who's contributed to that, and quite a broad range of organisations and people and thoughts for everybody, I think. Thank you. Item number 5 is the forward plan. And so can we have a quick look at that? And is everybody happy to approve the forward plan for executive going through into September? Yeah, thank you very much, everybody. Marvellous. Very good. Item number 6 and 7 and 8 are our financial documents and reports. So we're going to do those next. And item number 6 is finance and performance outturn for 23-24. And Debbie Mitchell is going to introduce that for us. So please go ahead, Debbie.
Thank you. So this report outlines the finance and performance position at the end of the previous financial year, so at 31st of March 2024, and it identifies an overspend of just under 4 million, 3.7 million, and that's compared to our forecast at Q3 of 5.6 million. So whilst there has been an overall improvement in the outturn, predominantly due to the significant work undertaken by officers across the council to reduce spending and carefully control all costs, it's important to note that the underlying position is still a significant overspend, and therefore it does still remain an issue of concern. As in previous years, the overspends are recurring pressures that are being seen predominantly across adults and children's. And while significant growth has been included in the 24-25 budget, we do expect there will still be an overspend position in the current year. So the summary position is outlined in table 1 at paragraph 16. There's an analysis of both finance and performance across all areas. Then in the body of the report, executive are also being asked to consider a number of other issues in this report. So firstly, there was, as part of the 24-25 budget process, there was a proposal to identify savings from a review of early intervention and prevention, and a commitment was made to report back to executive on how those savings would be achieved. That's set out in paragraphs 89 to 91. The second issue is that executive have been asked to consider and approve the write-off of some uncollectible business rate arrears, and that's set out in paragraphs 29 to 32. And finally, executive are also being asked to extend the current letter of credit to the York Museums Trust to April 2026, and to approve the provision of a new letter of credit to York Theatre Royal. And again, details are set out in the report, paragraphs 24 through 28.
Thank you, Debbie. Thanks for that update. And so please, can I see those that would like to speak on this item? And okay, Councillor Fenton, would you like to go ahead and please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the agenda's packed, so I'll try and keep my remarks succinct. We discussed at full council last night the parlour state of local government finances, and the outturn figures demonstrate the challenges that York faces as one of the most underfunded councils in the country. It's good to see the progress that was made by the previous administration in relation to stabilising the financial position within children's services has continued, but obviously adult social care continues to be a significant concern, with the overspend appearing to double to around £6 million. Despite warnings around making use of one-off reserves as a mitigation measure, the report confirms that this has proved necessary. My reading of the report is that around £3.6 million worth of earmarked reserves were used to reach a final balance, with a further 4.2 million of other one-off sources of finance used to deal with overspends. In terms of performance information, a number of indicators do give some cause for concern, such as a number of people sleeping rough, which does fluctuate but does remain a challenge, and a drop in recycling rates from 44% to 38%, which is even before the introduction of charging for green waste collection. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fenton. Councillor Lomas, would you like to go ahead? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I am disappointed to hear Councillor Fenton repeat the misinformation that was put across at full council meeting last night, which completely misconstrues a line that I have taken since I undertook this role, that we will not set a budget using one-off funding to cover recurring costs. However, as I would expect somebody who was in the previous administration to know, it is a legal duty on councils to balance their books by the end of the year. And every single year, officers work incredibly hard to make sure that we are able to do that, so that we retain our financial independence and we are able to continue to operate without having to submit the dreaded Section 114 notice to government. And I pay tribute to the work that every single officer in every single department has done over the last year and a little bit to try to rein in expenditure, to try to meet the savings targets that have been put to them, to try to work with the very, very complex nature of local government funding to ensure that we are able to deliver the services that residents need and deserve from us when they need it. The outturn is going to continue to be difficult, and I fully anticipate that this time next year we'll have a similar conversation, because the demand, the complexity and the cost of providing services to those adults and children who need them are only increasing. And it is the case that local authority funding has simply not kept pace with that increase in demand, complexity and cost. So what we have to do as a council is we have to work with what we've got. We've got to spread things ever so much more thinly, and our fantastic finance team have to juggle the impossible task of moving what funds they can legally move in order to get us to a position by the end of the year where we are able to balance the books. And I pay tribute to Debbie and all of her team and all of the officers who are involved in that. And we shouldn't underestimate how difficult it is. And we shouldn't underestimate the intense pressure that staff are under. We have set challenging targets for savings in order to try to preserve as many frontline council services as we possibly can. And we will always work to preserve those services as far as we can. An outturn like this is a fact of life for councils up and down the country. It is a fact of life. It is not a message of failure. It is a message that we have done our jobs. We've provided the services that residents need. And by an absolute feat of endurance by staff, we have come out at the end with a balanced book. And yes, that does mean we've used one-off funding. We've used reserves. We've raided the back of every sofa and every piggy bank we can find in order to get to that balanced position. And that will mean that next year it will be ever more difficult. So I am pleased that we had the debate last night at full council about local authority funding. That will help us in the future, but it's not going to help us immediately. And so I thank everybody involved in producing this report and getting us to the end of a very difficult financial process.
Thank you, Councillor Lomas. And yes, I couldn't agree more. And I think we feel very fortunate and relieved to be able to present a balanced budget. If we had done nothing in the last 12 months, that would not be the case, and our finances would be in a dreadful position. So, and that is something that Councillor Fenton well understands. Doing nothing is not an option, and we haven't done nothing. We've done a lot. The staff in this room who are here with us tonight have done an awful lot as well. And as I often say to everybody, there is no person and no service that is unaffected by this. And we all need to pull together and support each other through it, because it's not easy, but it is, as Councillor Lomas says, a fact of life for local authorities. So I draw everybody's attention to the recommendation on page 13. There's a list of them there. We're asked to note the finance and performance information, note the use of the contingency and earmark reserves to fund the overspend of 3.6 million. Approve that 591,000 savings identified during the year and outlined in paragraphs 89 to 91 as part of the review of early intervention and prevention activities across the council. Approve the business rates write-offs outlined in paragraphs 29 to 32. Approve the extension to April 2026, the letter of credit to York Museums Trust, as outlined in paragraphs 24 to 26, and approve the provision of a letter of guarantee to the York Theatre Royal, providing them with access to a maximum of 426,000 over the next 2 years, should it be required, as outlined in paragraphs 27 to 28. Please, can I see those in agreement with those recommendations? Show of hands. Thank you very much. So that is approved. Our next item is item number 7, and that is the capital programme outturn for 23-24 and revisions to the 24-25 and 28-29 programme. And Debbie Mitchell is going to introduce that report to us. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you. So this report sets out the progress in delivering the capital programme and presents the year-end position again at 31st of March, including the overall funding of the programme. There does continue to be a significant level of investment in a very wide range of schemes, and we've set out some of the key areas of progress at paragraphs 2 and 3 of the report. Understandably, there's again been slippage on a number of projects, and that has resulted in a reprofiling of the programme, where we move both the planned spend and an associated funding into future years. Paragraph 7 sets out the main areas of reprofiling. So table 1 at paragraph 8 sets out, is it table 1? Yes, it is. Sets out an overview of the programme by service area, further details provided on each of those areas throughout the body of the report. Some schemes have overspent, and again, the report gives detail of how those overspends have been funded within the overall programme. There's also a recommendation specifically asking the executive to approve the use of the capital contingency to fund some remedial works at the Castle Museum. Details of that set out in paragraphs 137 to 140. So there's a lot of detail in the report, but nothing specifically to draw to your attention, Chair.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Can I see those who'd like to speak on this item? Okay, Councillor Fenton, do you want to go ahead?
Thank you. And it was remiss of me not to thank officers for their work over the past year, what has obviously been and continues to be, as in previous years, a challenging set of circumstances. I welcome the progress contained in the report on the Station Gateway project, including the multi-storey car park, which I think is due to commence in the autumn. The report states that £2.3 million worth of the highways budget was unspent last year. Obviously, I appreciate that there are schemes that can't be completed for one reason or another, and that spending has been deferred, but as we heard from some earlier speakers, it really is critical that we make best use of that funding to improve our transport network for everybody. The report notes the £750,000 has been written off on the Castle Gateway project, which is obviously disappointing at a time when, as we've heard, council finances are so stretched. Looking forward, we look forward to seeing the revised designs for the scheme and the business case in due course. Finally, the reference in the report to measures to tackle climate change in 23-24 was 1.46 million. Appreciate some of that funding was match funding for other sources which may not have come through, and a relatively small amount of that money was actually spent in the last financial year. So very much hope that the pace of delivery will pick up in the current year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fenton. Councillor Lomas.
Thank you. Again, I must pay tribute to staff for the work that has gone into managing what is and remains an ambitious capital programme despite the financial challenges that we face. Councillor Fenton makes reference to making best use of funding, and that is sometimes exactly why we don't press ahead with projects until we're certain of them. It is exactly why sometimes projects slip, because we decide that we need to do the right job, not the quick job. And sometimes we have to undo things that have been begun that would take us down a path that would cause us difficulties. And that's why we have a write-off for the Castle Gateway project. The original project was one that we could not afford. It was one that would be very difficult to deliver. And it was also one that caused what I can only hope would be unintended consequences of further excluding disabled people from their city centre. And so we made a public decision at executive to change the direction of that project to deliver something that is affordable, sustainable, and maximises accessibility of our city centre. And I'm, of course, disappointed that we had to write off some of the monies that were already spent by the previous administration pursuing their aims for the Castle Gateway project. But I am pleased that we are able to draw a line under that now and move forward with a better scheme that is being developed that will have benefits across the city for residents, businesses and visitors. The capital programme is something that we have to maintain, we have to invest in, but we do that prudently and carefully, and we do it always thinking about the best value that we can deliver for our city.
Thank you, Councillor Lomas. So on this report, the recommendations are on page 66, paragraph 10, and their executives is asked to note the 23-24 capital outturn position of 98.377 million and approve the request for reprofiling totaling 23.054 million from the 23-24 programme to future years. Note the adjustments to schemes increasing expenditure in 23-24 by a net of 1.708 million. Recommend to full council the restated 24-25 to 2028-29 programme of 421.368 million and agree to a contribution of £200,000 from capital contingency to the York Museum Trust to fund roof works at York Castle Museum. So can I see those who are in favour of the recommendations, please? Thank you. So that's unanimously approved. Thank you, everybody. And then the final financial report is the Treasury Management Annual Report and Review of Prudential Indicators 2023-24. And again, our Chief Finance Officer,
Debbie Mitchell is going to introduce that report for us. Please go ahead, Debbie.
Thank you. So yeah, this is the Treasury Management Outturn Report for 23-24, and it outlines activity during the year. It is a statutory report for you that's required by the Prudential Code. It has already been considered by Audit and Governance Committee at their meeting last week on the 9th of July. The report just outlines a brief economic update along with an interest rate forecast provided by our Treasury Management advisors. The only issues to really draw your attention to is just to remind you that our strategy over recent years has been to use cash balances to delay borrowing, a strategy that has worked as well, but we have now started to borrow again in line with our expectations. Prudential indicators are included at Annex 1, but again, there's nothing that I need to draw your attention to, and there were no specific concerns raised by A&G to report back to you.
Thank you very much, Debbie. And can I see those that would like to speak on this item, please? Councillor Lomas, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Just very briefly, I thank obviously all of the officers involved in managing what is a really complicated situation, but I also thank members of the Audit and Governance Committee for the scrutiny that they give to our finance reports before they come to executive. It's really welcomed and their input is always welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Lomas. And so on this report, the recommendations are on page 102, and that is paragraph 6, 7 and 8 at the bottom of the page there. So executive is asked to note the 2023-24 performance of Treasury management activity, the prudential indicators outlined in Annex A, and note the compliance with all indicators. It is a statutory duty for the council to determine and keep under review the affordable borrowing limits. During the 23-24 financial year, the council has operated within the Treasury and prudential indicators set out in the council's Treasury management strategy statement for 23-24. And there are no policy changes to the Treasury management strategy statement 23-24 for members to agree and approve. The details in this report update the Treasury management position and prudential indicators in the light of the updated economic position and budgetary changes already approved. Can I see those in favour of those recommendations then, please? Thank you. Thank you. That's approved unanimously. Thank you very much. And thank you, Debbie, for all of the work that you and your team and also all officers across the council do to make sure that we remain as financially healthy as we possibly can. Right, this is where we go into our shift of agenda items. So the last two on the agenda, item 14 and 15, are both to do with housing. So we're going to hear those next. So please can I ask officers to come forward who are going to present the council house acquisitions and disposals policy to us. So the report is titled Improving Standard of Council Housing Through the Adoption of an Acquisitions and Disposals Policy. And we have Pauline Stutchfield and Michael Jones here to introduce that report to us. Michael, are you going to speak?
I am, yes.
Please go ahead.
Through the recommendations in this report, we are seeking to improve the quality of homes that we have available to offer those in housing need. The recommendations will not result in us asking residents to move out of their home when they wish to remain. The policy approach is primarily targeting homes as they become empty. The council own a small number of homes which, because of their age and construction type, are disproportionately expensive to modernise and retrofit. This is a particular issue as we know that council housing residents are more likely to be in fuel poverty than homeowners or private renters, and we know this can have a significant impact on people's physical and mental health. Through a process of disposing of a very small number of council houses and replacing them with homes which benefit from good accessibility standards, are of modern construction requiring no major repairs, and are an EPCC or above, we can make a positive impact to the lives of council house tenants. This approach will also mean that our investment budgets into existing houses will be able to go further, improving a greater number of homes. To be clear, the disposal of a small number of council houses is not a new approach. Decisions around this have been taken on an ad hoc basis for a number of years. The principle of buying and selling council homes sit within both current and previous council housing asset management plans which have been approved. What this report seeks to do is to provide greater transparency around how these decisions will be made, and more importantly, the report specifically ring fences any sales receipts to be used for the replacement of additional homes. This will mean that a replacement home is provided for everyone that's sold, and we will seek wherever possible to exceed this by purchasing a greater number of homes than those that we dispose of. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Pauline, would you like to say anything? Please go ahead if you would.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to reiterate the point that this has featured in previous asset management plans, and the last one being in December 2022. So this is building on if you like, increasing the transparency around decision making and providing clear criteria.
Please, can you speak directly into the mic, Pauline, and
Sorry.
speak up a bit? It's hard to hear above the background noise.
Yeah, I just reiterate that the last asset management plan was approved in December 2022 when this was clearly mentioned in there, and this builds on the criteria, transparency around the criteria and the decision and financial decision making. The funding for improving these properties can be reinvested in other homes as it won't be spent on the original property. And as the Equalities Impact Assessment states, replacing older, less energy efficient stock with newer homes that will be more affordable to heat and keep warm will improve the standard of living for tenants who will be more likely to use the heating. Fuel poverty, as we know, impacts on the ability of lower income households to heat their homes and damages their standards of living. More efficient homes will be cheaper to heat and reduce impact of fuel poverty, therefore improving tenant standard of living. And it is critical to maintain and where possible increase where we can buy more housing, affordable housing stock to reduce homelessness in the city.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can I see those members that would like to speak on this item, please? Yeah, Councillor Fenton, do you want to go ahead? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you for the report. Increasing the supply of affordable homes is an ambition we all share, and it's something that Councillor Pavlovic and I have done work on in the past. And a pragmatic and location-sensitive approach to the disposal of assets can support that ambition. And as the officers highlighted, this isn't something new. And indeed, the Housing Asset Management Plan agreed in 2022 was evidence of that. I do have some concerns about the adapted approach that's reflected in this report. What makes York special, I think, is its mix of housing tenures throughout our communities. And that includes there being council homes in what the report describes as high value areas. The adapted plan that would see these homes sold as a matter of course, as and when they become vacant, would, I fear, create a risk of a move away from that approach, which I don't think is the intention here, but it does give me some concerns around hardwiring that in to the way in which these properties are considered as and when they become vacant. I also have some concerns about presentationally around the council being seen to offload homes that might be seen as more difficult to retrofit and leaving it up to the private sector to take on that burden. The private sector owners may not have the same appetite as a council to decarbonise our housing stock. And would ask that, are there measures that could be put in place to support owners of these homes when in private ownership, so that they can be made more energy efficient and the council isn't simply saying, there you go, over to you. I would also like to suggest that all acquisitions or disposals should have executive member oversight, not just those over £500,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fenton. Would officers like to respond to any of that just with technical information, if there's anything to add.
Yeah,
Thank you.
The policy doesn't say that any high value stock will be disposed of. I think the report is very much driven by the ambition to improve the quality of housing. So that is the main driver of this. So where housing is considered to be less suitable, whether that's energy efficiency, whether it's accessibility, whether it's space standards, and where they have a sufficient value that allows us to replace them on a one-for-one basis, that's where the policy kicks in. So it's not particularly targeting high value areas, it's targeting homes that are more suitable for our residents.
Thank you, Michael. That's really helpful. Pauline?
Yes, we've agreed we will support purchases where they need it with retrofit advice and information.
Sorry, I can't hear you, Pauline. Sorry, Pauline, speak. Put it up towards you if you need to.
We will support purchases where they need advice, information and guidance in terms of retrofits.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Pavlovic?
Thank you, Chair, and can I first thank you for moving these agenda items forward, and I apologise in advance for sounding a little bit more hoarse and a little bit more breathless than I do normally, I hope. And I thank the officers for a really detailed and well-considered approach, which, as you've heard, is about codifying, writing up formally instead of just doing it on a wing and a prayer with the executive member. In the previous administration, this is saying where properties reach a certain standard, and it doesn't mean everyone, and Michael's just made that crystal clear to Councillor Fenton, is where it is suitable to sell and the value is sufficient to be able to replace not just one for one, but one for two and potentially even one for three, if we can get involved in buying cheaper Section 106 new builds. This is better for residents. It's better for the environment. It's a shame Councillor Fenton missed my decision session literally before this meeting, because one of the agenda items was absolutely the point you've just made about supporting private residents to retrofit and develop their houses. So I just want to make one thing absolutely crystal clear that wasn't made clear in the media, and sadly wasn't made clear by the leader of the opposition's comments in the press, is these properties will not be even considered for disposal unless they are empty. We are not going to be decanting anybody out of their home. We will do all the work that is required, but when the properties are empty and when they're deemed so expensive to retrofit that we could do 2, 3, 4 number of houses for the same cost, then consideration will be made towards selling them. I think I've probably said enough. I've said as much as I'm able to. So thank you, and I do recommend approval of the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pavlovic. Yeah, and I'm glad you've been able to clarify, you know, the misconceptions that have been bandied around, as always. So thank you for that, and thanks to officers as well for helping to clarify some of the points that were raised. And so the recommendations for this report are on page 956, and that's paragraph 12, where the executive is asked to approve the adoption of the housing revenue account acquisitions and disposals policy, which is attached at Appendix A.
approve the delegated authorities set out in the housing revenue account acquisitions and disposals policy to enable the acquisition and disposal of council homes which meet the criteria set out in the policy, and note that updates on acquisitions and disposals will be included in future housing delivery programme executive updates. So can I see those who are in favour of those recommendations, please? Thank you very much. That's unanimously approved. Do you need some water over there? Perhaps somebody could help. I have to say, I think City of York Council's got amongst the illest bunch of people at the moment that we've had for months.
I'd also like to thank you for getting these items out of the way as well.
To save infection, I hope. No, he's not infectious anymore. He's just not very well. So item 15 is the update on the housing delivery programme, including update on housing delivery programme and the disposal of surplus sites. So we've moved from properties to sites. And I'd like to say that this is the item where we did approve exclusion of press and public, but we don't actually need to do that unless we do discuss the appendix that was mentioned. So I hope that we can have this discussion without needing to do that. Officers are telling me that we can. I don't think anybody is interested in discussing them. So we look like we will be fine, but I'm sure that Dan, my friendly lawyer over here, will tell us if we stray into that area and that we do need to ask the public to leave. But I hope that we can get through this without having to do that. So please be mindful of that. And to present this report, we have Sophie Round, and Michael Jones is back again, and we have Nick Collins. So Sophie and Michael are from housing and Nick is from asset management. So please go ahead. Sophie, you look like you're poised to start.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
going to start. So this report seeks to build on the executive's commitment to deliver more affordable housing on council-owned land assets across the city. The paper provides an update on decisions made by executive in November 2023 and the wider progress of their housing delivery programme, and seeks new decisions regarding the disposal to registered providers of Lowfield Green Plot B for affordable housing for those aged over 55 and Morel House for general needs affordable housing. The report also provides an update on the Castle Mills site, where the housing team are continuing to explore options to deliver this site for affordable housing. Following market engagement, there is an interested registered provider who is keen to deliver the site as 100% affordable housing, and the paper seeks permission to further develop that option through entering a memorandum of understanding whilst the RP undertakes the feasibility work, with an ambition to bring back a land offer alongside a supporting business case later in the year.
Thank you, Sophie. So as well as providing an overview and update of assets considered suitable for affordable housing, the report also sets out the status of a number of assets not considered suitable for such and which are thus recommended for disposal. The report seeks recommendations to dispose on a long leasehold basis of 5 apartments on Shambles, which are vacant, and further to dispose of the freehold interest in a detached dwelling on the avenue, which is no longer required operationally and is vacant. The report also recommends the closure of the development agreement governing the Hungate site, which was sold some 18 years ago in exchange for the capital consideration now offered by the owner of the site, and which is detailed in the confidential appendix. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael, do you want to say anything at this point? No? Okay, thank you. Can I see those who'd like to speak on this item? Councillor Fenton, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, officers. I'm pleased to see the reference in the report to collaborative working with registered providers, who are obviously key to the delivery of an increase in the number of truly affordable homes. The report rightly notes that there's a trade-off between a number of policy priorities around providing affordable housing as well as getting best value from assets that are to be disposed of. Before I talk about the issue of 100% affordable on council owned land, I'm very conscious of not being accused of misrepresentation. So I did check the the Labour manifesto from last year's local elections, which includes a sentence: housing built on council-owned land will be 100% genuinely affordable. So with that in mind, the approach set out does seem to be something of a change of tack, in terms of accepting there are some sites that for various reasons are not suited to the provision of affordable housing. In terms of the recommendation to dispose of 22 The Avenue, it was slightly surprised to see the recommendation there, given when the previous administration proposed to dispose of the site in 2020. That was called in by opposition councillors, including Councillor Pavlovic. So again, something of a change of tack there. With regard to the 5 flats on the Shambles, I was wondered whether any consideration is being given to imposing any restriction on the future use of those properties after their sale, in terms of ensuring their use as homes rather than short-term holiday lets, and whether that's a possibility. In relation to Castle Mills, I won't say anything about anything in restricted papers. The report sets out that the proposed course of action will provide a lower capital receipt than would otherwise be the case. That's nothing new. I know the current Spark site under the previous administration was put forward for a similar plan. All I would ask that is, as and when it is acceptable to do so, the information is made publicly available around the gap in those valuations, along with an assessment of any property law implications. And finally, in relation to the disposal of the Lowfield Green Plot B to a registered provider for affordable housing, it's obviously to be welcomed. I know that residents living on or near the development would welcome assurances in due course around conditions relating to construction traffic associated with that development, which I know has been an issue for them for many years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fenton. Councillor Pavlovic.
Thank you, Chair. And that was perhaps a more balanced perspective than I was expecting. But notwithstanding that there has been no change from the Labour manifesto. We said we will build where we are building on council-owned land, 100% affordable housing. I recall there being significant questioning of that from other parties. But what were we doing? We've moved Ordnance Lane, which is shortly to come before a planning committee, from 49 affordable homes to a full 101 affordable homes. The Willow House development that's about to come forward and is currently in design stage. And I had a very interesting meeting with the architects earlier this week. What's it going to be? It's going to be 100% affordable housing built by City of York Council, unlike the previous administration, who were more prepared to sell the majority of those homes at full market price to people who could already buy elsewhere, which was a complete scandal, in my opinion, but it was a decision of the previous administration to do it. We've turned that around. And where we can't build, because the HRA does not have unlimited funds, we're talking to the RPs to say, which was another manifesto commitment, by the way, that we will work with registered providers who will then deliver 100% affordable housing on that site and deliver a capital receipt as well. I've had numerous conversations with your leader. Castle Mills is dead then, isn't it? Well, you've just heard we're already in discussions for an 100% affordable housing scheme. And I'm not going to go into any of the confidentials. We're doing what we said we were going to do. We're going to get a quantum increase in genuinely affordable housing, including significant uplifts in social rented, as well as intermediate rents aimed at key workers, as well as shared ownership schemes, when everybody said this couldn't be done. This is an administration that sticks to its pledges, and that you will see homes in the ground, homes being built, and they're not underground, homes being built for the people who genuinely need them.
Yes.
And quickly. So that's as much as I want to say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pavlovic, and I couldn't agree more. And I have to say that of the many successes that our administration has had in only 14 months, that this is one of my proudest, is the amount of affordable, truly affordable housing that we're able to deliver for the people of York that absolutely need it, and they need it rapidly. And so that social rent social rent, and then key worker housing, 60% of market rent, and shared ownership housing, and that's what we're delivering, and that's what the officers are supporting us and helping us to do. And I have to say that the city out there, the registered providers, the housing associations have been tremendously supportive. Developers are being tremendously supportive where we need that as well. And they are just really happy we're getting on with it. So I couldn't be happier. And these disposals here, the use of land, where it is allocated to housing, if 100% affordable housing is going onto it, and where a piece of land is not allocated to housing, then it may be used for other purposes, but that's not what this particular report is about. So there are a number of recommendations on here, and they are on page 1004 and 1005. And there are quite a lot of them in paragraphs 15 and 16 and 17. So we've got 15 A, B and C, which is about the Lowfield Green Plot B, that I'm not going to read it all out because we can be here till next week, but it's basically about the disposal of the Lowfield Plot Site B by freehold transfer or grant of a long lease to a registered provider, which to those lay terms housing association, for the delivery of age-appropriate affordable housing for residents aged over 55. And there's delegations there in paragraph B, and the approval of carrying out a procurement process in paragraph C. And then Castle Mills. So this is city centre, prime site, very desirable place to live. So we're noting the interest from a housing association in developing that site for 100% affordable housing. And we're going into an agreement for a memorandum of understanding to give them exclusivity over that site for a 4-month period, so that they can undertake feasibility work with the aim of disposing of the site for affordable housing. We've got Moral House, which is to agree to dispose of the site by freehold transfer or grant of a long lease to a housing association for the delivery of 100% affordable housing, and delegations there to enter into the resulting agreement. Paragraph 16 is about procuring an operator to provide benefits for residents of Marjorie Waite Court and the surrounding community. So that's approving the procurement there, and also delegations needed in order to carry that out. And then paragraph 17, disposal of assets considered surplus and not suitable for affordable housing. So that's why they are being sold. So that is the freehold interest in 22 The Avenue, and delegation to the Director of Finance to agree the terms of disposal there. B is to agree to dispose of a 99-year leasehold interest in the 5 one-bed flats and communal areas serving such at the Shambles, and they are being disposed of because they are not suitable for housing because of the construction of them and size of them, and the associated risks with having somebody in there as a permanent home. C
agreed to release the development obligations and overage provisions currently contained within the existing development agreement at Hungate. And that is outlined in the confidential appendix, and there's delegations there for the Director of Finance and in consultation with the Director of Governance to agree the terms of the disposal and enter into the resulting agreement, which will bring a significant amount of additional income into the council as well, which can be used for other purposes. So all in all, I think that's very positive, and I would like to see those who are in agreement of those recommendations. Right, marvellous. That's absolutely unanimous. We can get on with it and deliver the 100% affordable housing that our city needs. Thank you, officers, for all the work that you and your teams are doing. Right, Councillor Pavlovic at this point is going to leave us. Thank you for coming in and being with us this evening, and go home and get some rest and recuperation. Right, so we're going back up the agenda now to item number 9. Actually, does anybody want a brief break? We've been going for an hour and 20 minutes. Is that a not yet? Perhaps in a bit. Should we carry on for a bit? Okay. Okay, so item number 9 is the local transport strategy, which was really of high interest to our public speakers earlier. So we have Julian Ridge and Michael Howard that have come to present this report to us. So thank you for joining us this evening. And please go ahead. Thank you. Please bring it close to you and speak directly into it, because it's quite hard to hear folks in here. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Come to speak to you this evening with regard to the paper on the new local transport strategy. Thank you. In March this year, the executive approved the preparation of the new local transport strategy for York, based on support for policies which were consulted on through our big transport conversation, which was a citywide consultation which took place between November 23 and February 24. The papers presented here have further developed through stakeholder engagement in preparation for the strategy. A clear ambition of the council is to continue to work to improve accessibility, to improve the city centre as well as the wider city. Therefore, in making a change to transform our city roads, routes and foot streets within the pedestrian area is an opportunity to ensure they are accessible for all, and that is practicable. The transport strategy will guide transport implementation in York and will inform supporting documents, which include the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, local transport strategy implementation plan, the movement and place plan framework, and the updated bus service improvement plan, all of which will be presented to the executive later this year. The local transport strategy is a key priority in the 10-year city plan. The strategy will set out how by 2032, York residents will benefit from an accessible, affordable and sustainable and resilient transport network, and continue to actively improve health and support the thriving economy for the decade to come. My colleague Julian Ridge will set out the details of the strategy.
Okay, my name's Julian Ridge. I'm the Sustainable Transport Manager for City of York, which means I look after transport strategy. I'm aware that there's a very large document pack that came with this item, and I was heartened by many of the comments that we received from some of the people who spoke at the beginning of the meeting, that they had clearly read through the document pack and taken the trouble to form some opinions of their own about it. I think it's a really exciting time for transport in York. The movement and place plan in particular sets out a framework for us to think of transport quite differently in the city, as it's a very attractive vision, I feel. the movement and place plan in particular sees transport as an enabler, not just of transport, but also much wider outcomes that we want to see in the city, particularly around better health, improved air quality, and CO2 reductions. The report advocates applying the approach across York. It's very important. It is not just about the city centre, but sets out in some detail how the approach can be applied in York suburbs and villages and district centres and large employment centres and so on and so forth. And it's absolutely essential that it's thought of in that way. It is not a movement and place strategy simply for the city centre. I think without going into further detail, that is probably about as much as I'm proposing to say at this point. I know that Michael's going to talk a little bit about the specific recommendations.
Thank you. So there are a number of recommendations that sit within the paper as presented this evening. The first recommendation relates to the movement and plan framework. The framework will consider York historically and guide the development of our city, including our streets and public spaces. Through the development of the detailed movement and place plan, the executive are invited to instruct officers to progress on development of the movement and place plan, guided by the framework. The executive is also invited to instruct officers to prepare a 5-year transport implementation plan to enact the new transport strategy. The new policy framework for transport across the city, by improving the local transport strategy, will enable, adopting the recommendation to shape a more accessible city centre in consultation with the disabled community and local businesses, considers how the equalities and impacts and independent recommendations by the accessibility consultants on the local transport strategy and shares best practice from other cities which have made place through and collated by MEMA. We're also looking for approval of the summary of the movement and place plan approach as detailed to develop the future transport framework. And we are seeking instruction for officers to commence development of the movement and place plan. Thank you.
Thank you both. That's really great to see this work coming forward, and thank you for everything you've put in so far. Can I see those that would like to speak on this item, please? Councillor Fenton, do you want to go ahead? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, officers. And I know this is a very welcome suite of documents, and I know it is a result of a huge amount of work and input from officers, residents, members, and it's good to see some of the ambitions set out in the February 2023 draft have made it through into the strategy as it's evolved. Just a couple of specific comments. In policy focus area 1 on accessibility, there's reference to the provision of blue badge parking spaces for motorists, but no mention of the provision of community transport services for older or disabled people who do not drive or have access to a car. The former dial and ride service does get a mention in the MEMA report on city centre access, but obviously this doesn't reflect the fact that many of the residents who used that service used it to get to and from out of town supermarkets, in addition to services into and out of the city centre. The suggestion in the MEMA report is that you can either have a dial and ride service or a city centre shuttle, but not both. And I think that suggestion is kind of unhelpful, because I think the two services are very different and meet different needs. And maybe that wasn't the intention in terms of how the report was written, but it was unhelpful in the way that I interpreted it. I know the executive will be considering the recommendations of the cross-party scrutiny review into dial and ride, so obviously that's an issue that we can discuss again in due course. The movement and place framework gives a lot of food for thought. Presentationally, it was unfortunate that the majority of the photographs in the document were of the city centre. This absolutely has to be a plan for the whole city, for its suburbs, for its villages, and we need to avoid giving the impression that it's not, because I know that that's not the intention with the movement and place plan. But in summary, my colleagues and I look forward to continuing to engage constructively as we move from the strategy into the design and implementation phases.
Thank you, Councillor Fenton. Councillor Revilius?
Thank you. First of all, I want to really give a heartfelt thanks to the officers, all of the wider team. This has been an immense piece of work, and there's been a lot of change along the way, and we've really worked very hard together on this, and there's been a lot of listening and a lot of learning, and it's come together really well, so thank you. I'm very excited about the local transport strategy and the movement and place plan. It really puts people at the heart of it, and it recognises that at the moment, this city isn't functioning in terms of transport, and we don't have equality of access to good, sustainable transport. And that's the core aim of this, is to make sure that everyone across the city has access to good quality, sustainable transport. But at the same time, we want to use this as an opportunity to improve the spaces that we live in, the city that we enjoy, and really improve the health of people. And evidence from other places show that by being clever, by the way that you arrange your transport and you give access to those sustainable options, you can have really, really brilliant health benefits and a more livable city. So it's very exciting, and really glad to be here looking at this today. I just want to pick up on some of the things that public speakers raised. In terms of accessibility, we are on a learning journey with accessibility and making our transport accessible. And we recognise that some of the schemes, we haven't got it quite right. We're reviewing them. And we're also thinking about how we can do a little bit more training with officers to get really up to date on the inclusive design principles that we need to implement when we're doing our schemes. So it is a journey, and we are listening to people, and we want to get, well, we are going to get this right, but it takes a bit of time sometimes. A number of the speakers mentioned 20 mile per hour and a desire for increasing the 20 mile per hour zones across the city. That's definitely a consideration, and it's a really good tool in our box to improve road safety. So we will be looking at that in the implementation plan for sure. And we also have committed to developing a parking strategy, because we recognise that the way we use our streets at the moment, a lot of it is just parked cars, and some places we could do better. So we'll be looking at that parking strategy. I want to give a huge vote of thanks to the Civic Trust, who've been very supportive in developing this strategy, and they wrote a section reviewing what other cities have done, which has been really valuable in that we've learnt from other cities. We don't have to reinvent wheels. We can do and learn from other cities. So that was immensely valuable, and they've been very supportive all along and provided lots of useful advice. I recognise the concerns that have been raised around the fact that we haven't got the implementation strategy yet, and that this is the high level, you haven't got the implementation plan, this is the high level strategy. It was important to separate this out, because we need to get that implementation plan absolutely right. We don't want to have unintended consequences by rushing it. So we are going to bring it forward in the autumn. We are working on it now. But first of all, we wanted to get this strategy here because it provides us with the framework that we're working to. And it gives that message to all our partners and developers across the city as to what we're looking for as a city. So we really wanted to get that high level strategy out there and all the policies so that we can start using them right now. But the implementation plan will come, and we are working on it, and it'll come in the autumn. A few of the other comments. Yes, we've had mention of the dial-a-ride service and a shuttle bus in the city centre. We absolutely recognise that the loss of the dial-a-ride has been, it's really been felt hard by some people across the city. They were very reliant on it, and it provided an excellent service. We will be looking at how we can replace that. It's going to be difficult, but we will look at it, and we'll use our bus service improvement plan. And again, that sort of detail we will be bringing in the implementation plan in the autumn. So we will have more to say on that then. We will be looking at how we access the city centre, and the MIMA report was very valuable in helping us think about everybody's perspective on the city centre. So we will be co-designing a safe city centre space that works for everybody. And certainly that needs to work for people, disabled people. It also needs to work for the cycle couriers. It needs to work for everybody, and we'll find ways that can make that happen. Yes, buses were a big part of the public consultation. It's clear that buses really matter to people in York, and we will be working very hard in our implementation plan to look at how we can provide a more cohesive offer and get those cross-city journeys happening easily. So buses are going to be important, and we'll be working closely with the mayoral combined authority on that as well, and looking at the options for some sort of franchising model. So that's hopefully to come. We really appreciate the support that so many people have brought today, and that this is very much been a cross-party piece of work as well, and we value the input that's come from Liberal Democrats, Conservatives and independent members, and we're really looking forward to continuing and having that conversation as we develop the implementation plan. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ravilius, and I have to say, you know, this is another item that I think we all feel tremendously proud of. It was something that when we were in opposition, we argued for tirelessly over that 4-year period of starting and getting through into a new phase of transport in York. And we didn't get very far then, did we? So it's fantastic to see that in the 14 months that we've been in administration, we've been able to bring it forward in this way. And I think it shows the ambition and seriousness of intention of our administration, and we're not frightened to get on and tackle some of the challenging issues that urban areas and historic cities like York face all the time. So it's very positive, and thank you to all the teams for working with us on that. It's been a great thing to see, and I'm very glad to see this report coming through today, and look forward to September with the other policies as well. So going to the recommendations, which are on page 129 and 130, and those are paragraph 24, 1 to 5. And again, there are quite a few of them. Where am I? So recommendations on page, starting on page 129. So we're invited to approve the new policy framework for transport across the city and approve the local transport strategy. Note the feedback on our big transport conversation. We're recommended to adopt the recommendations to shape a more accessible city centre developed in consultation with the disabled community and local businesses. 3, consider equality impact of the independent recommendations made on accessibility and on the local transport strategy. 4, note the report sharing best practice from other cities who have made their places more accessible, collated by MEMA. 5, approve the summary of the movement and place plan approach, and that's detailed in Annex F as the basis for future transport planning in York, and instruct officers to commence work on the movement and place plan for York. And that will be presented to executive for approval at a later date, which we expect to be in the autumn. So please, can I see those who are in agreement with those recommendations? That's unanimously approved. This is a landmark decision for York, and shows our route forward into a more livable city for all of our residents, and congratulations to everybody who's been involved to this point, and thank you for our partners who've also had input, and that is approved. Well done, everybody. Right, thank you to Michael and Julian for joining us on that item as well. Next we have the Combined Authority Key Route Network. That's item 10. And so we have Steve Ragg and James Gilchrist that have joined us to introduce this complex area for us. So please, off you go, James.
Thank you, Chair. So slightly more mundane, I'm afraid, than the other bit of the transport portfolio we just presented. So under devolution, we need to identify what's called a key route network, and Department for Transport have these tiers of transport hierarchy. So there's a strategic road network, which is primarily the network that National Highways look after, so the A64 in our area. And they have also historically talked about the major road network, which includes our ring road and some routes to it. So we've got to identify a key route network and recommend that to the Combined Authority. And that's what this report is focused on. The only thing I would add is that we, at this stage, obviously, the paper was written prior to the election, and we haven't yet got the sort of the fine detail of where the new government's thinking will be. Our expectation is that the highway maintenance funding won't be linked to the hierarchy of the network, whether it's key route network or just part of our transport network. But DFT have historically ring-fenced improvement pots of money to higher levels of the network. So, for instance, Outer Ring Road is part of a major road network funding pot of money. I'll hand over to Steve to talk through the options that we've developed to present to you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. As James says, the key route network is something that spans through our authority area and into our neighbouring authority area of North Yorkshire. We've worked closely with North Yorkshire Council on this. The paper identifies the sort of things that have gone into defining the KRN. Paragraph 19 onwards shows about large traffic routes, strategic links, bus networks, etc. And in a lot of ways, it does mirror and mimic the former major route network. But we've also, through discussions over the previous item, hence the reason why this is followed on from that, embedded the ideals of our movement and place plan into what we see as being our key route network, which has been a really important process, informed very closely with Councillor Revilius and the expert groups that we've been utilising to develop the new transport strategy and the movement and place plan. So there are three options that have come from that, which are illustrated in the reports. The first one, option one, includes the main arterial roads into the city, the outer ring roads, the northern ring road, not the A64 as James says, because that's part of the national strategic road network, and the continuation of those roads to the inner ring road and the inner ring road itself. Option two is that same network but stopping short of the inner ring road in such a way where the main intersections between the inner ring road and those main arterial roads are left out of the KRN. And then option three, which would be the other version of all of that, where it doesn't include the inner or the outer ring road and just the main arterial links to the outer ring road. We've done that because there's a lot of moving parts here. As James has outlined, there will be funding from the mayoral combined authority to target improvements along the KRN. And obviously that's something that we need to look towards and work closely with North Yorkshire on. But similarly, we need to ensure that we safeguard our key road, parts of the key road network within City of York Council area to ensure that we can put the full desires and outcomes of the movement and place plan into place and give us as much freedom and flexibility as possible. It's a difficult thing to square off at the minute, we'll be honest, and it's a conversation that we're having within a bit of a vacuum of any certainty. You know, we don't know quite what funding is going to be targeted from the York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority towards the KRN. And similarly, we've just approved via this group, which is fantastic, you know, the approach to movement in place. So as such, officers have recommended option 2. But we do believe that all 3 options are viable and would deliver us something to move forward and work with North Yorkshire partners. So I think that's as much as we really wanted to present today, and open for any questions.
Thank you, Steve, for that. This is a bit of a complex area, so I am going to ask if any members do have questions before we go into any comment at all. Councillor Revilius.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we have discussed this backwards and forwards, and like you say, we're working in a bit of a vacuum because we don't know exactly what it's going to mean. But I suppose the question I'd like to know is, how easy do you think it will be to add to the key route network at a later date? I'm anxious about putting too much into it right now because I feel like we haven't yet developed our movement and place plan, and for us to lose the ability to influence and control some sections of road could be detrimental until a later point when we have more clarity on our movement and place plan. So my sort of inclination is that we err on the side of caution, and that I would anticipate we could add to the key route network later. But if I'm misunderstanding that, I'd be curious to know what you think.
I think, subject to the mayoral combined authorities agreement, I think it's relatively easy to recommend changes, but I think those changes can work both ways, so they can be withdrawn as well as added. But I think there's an ability to keep this under review. The only thing I would flag is, I suspect DFT may not look kindly if we put something in so we could chase the funding. That's the one thing we just need to be aware of, that the timescales sometimes are a call for schemes. And if we're trying to squeeze that process in, I don't know how long that process would take. That's the only thing I would flag.
Thank you. Councillor Fenton.
Thank you. A question along similar lines. I know we've talked about sort of reimagining the inner ring road, and that came out from the strategy consultation around it not being considered fit for purpose. And I understand why option 2 is preferred in terms of not wanting to compromise potential transformation of the inner ring road. So I'm right in thinking knowing the information that you have, which isn't complete, you think it's the safest move at this point not to include the inner ring road, but potentially to request for it to be added when we've got a bit more clarity around what our vision for it is going forward.
Yeah, and the inner ring road is a real important area, isn't it, for movement and place ideals and all of the previous pieces of work that we've done there. So I think the exclusion of the inner ring road felt like a straightforward thing to do. But I think, and you can see it within the maps and the report, I think stopping in option 2, stopping the main arterial routes short of those main intersections is also a really important step forward, because it gives us more control over them. So for example, on Bootham, you stop a good fair few hundred meters short of where you reach Gilligate there and Exhibition Square. Really important because it gives us more control to put our ideals across that. It's a risky balance, of course, because it might also prevent us getting a full range of KRN funding from the mayoral authority, and really it's hard to say. So I think we really can't say any more than actually, our recommendation as officers is option 2. But similarly, depending on what the discussion is, we do believe that all 3. But going back to the answer that James has just given, is it easier to put things in or take things out? Again, it's perhaps easier to request things, isn't it, rather than try to take things out. But we do have the general support of North Yorkshire council as well on our approach, which is really important.
Thank you for that, Steve. Right, does anybody want to say anything further, members? Councillor Kilbane?
Just very briefly, Chair, that obviously the Mayoral Combined Authority also doesn't have its local transport strategy together yet, and is, will be a way off that because it's waiting for York and North Yorkshire to come forward. So, I mean, I think it's fine to just proceed with caution on until that becomes clearer.
Thank you. Councillor Fenton, did you indicate? No. Councillor Revilius, thank you.
So, it's been a really interesting sort of thing to look at. My inclination at this moment in time is I feel it's safer to go with option 3, where we put less of the network in. I completely recognise the reasoning that option 2 is being recommended here, and I think what I want to do is see us start to develop the movement and place plan, and then have a reconsider of the key route network at that point. So it might be in 6 months' time or something. And at that point, we may also have more clarity on what it really means, what the key route network means. So my preference is to err on the side of caution and go with option 3 at this moment in time.
Thank you, Councillor Revilius. So in that case, then we are going to have a look at the recommendations, which are on page 505. My computer's put the screen on, so one moment. Page 505, we've got recommendations at paragraph 7 and 8. And paragraph 7 says there are 3 options that have been identified to define the key route network within the City of York Council area. And these options have been developed to present opportunities, to balance opportunities, to deliver outcomes from the KRN funding programmes and the emerging City of York Council movement and place plan. And it is recommended that executive approve proposals for a key route network ahead of submission for approval to the York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority. And officers have recommended option 2, but it sounds to me like Councillor Revilius would like us to go with option 3 instead at this point in time, on the understanding that we can expand the key route network at some point in the future. And I totally can see that there shouldn't be any problem with that. So where it says option 2 in the report, we are shifting to option 3. So can I see those who are in agreement of that, please? Right, so that's unanimously approved, and so now you have a key route network approved and can move forward to the next stage. So thank you very much for all the work you've been doing on it. Thanks for joining us this evening. Do we need a quick break now? Anybody? No? Goodness me, you've got the stamina this evening. Well done. So item number 11 is Acomb Front Street Phase 2 update. And we have Catherine Daly and Julie. Apologies, I can't remember your surname. Julie Stormont. I can't read it from here. Stormont Dorber, sorry, apologies. My sincere apologies for that. So please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So in October 2023, Executive agreed that £570,000 of UK Shared Prosperity Fund money be allocated to the Acomb Front Street Phase 2. And you tasked us with undertaking meaningful engagement with the local community to inform that work, following strong feedback on Phase 1, particularly in relation to bollards. And the community response has been absolutely tremendous, I think it's fair to say, generating 900 completed surveys and more than 5,000 comments to be analysed. And the report sets out the outcomes of the engagement activity and how this has informed the design approach for Phase 2. So in paragraphs 15 to 18 in the report, we're recommending that executive agree the high-level principles set out for the phase 2 scheme, and that the decision on the final costed scheme design be delegated to the executive member for economy and culture to be made at a public decision session on the 24th of September. UK SPF spend deadlines remain challenging, and this approach will enable the project to progress whilst also retaining full transparency of that decision. The Council Scrutiny Committee have also agreed to consider the scheme at their scheduled meeting on the 9th of September in advance of those final decisions being taken. We're also recommending a number of practical next steps, and this is really to enable officers to commence further necessary preparatory work ahead of that final report. And finally, we're recommending some work to explore whether changes might be made to the market charter to allow more markets to take place in Acomb. And this is really on the back of the monthly trial with Little Bird Markets, which has seen a really positive early success from the phase 2 work. And more regular events is something that the community have placed right at the top of their priority list in the feedback. With your permission, Chair, I'm just going to hand very briefly to Julie, who's been an absolute fantastic project manager on this phase 2 work. But I'd like to thank Julie. I'd like to thank, in particular, Catherine Atkinson in our team as well, who's led on much of the engagement analysis, which has been a big job. And then as well as that, highways and communications colleagues have been really important in supporting the work. We've had some external colleagues from Urban Glow and PWP supporting on urban design input, which has brought really welcome challenge and critical friend support on phase 2 designs. The Common Room from the University of York, who've supported our engagement work as well, and the Greater Acomb Community Forum for their work on the community identity, which has been really welcomed by residents. And of course, all the stakeholders and residents who fed into the work. And we had a really well attended and positive ward committee last week, which showed the real positivity in the community to take this forward. So very briefly, just hand to Julie to cover a couple of things. Thank you.
Yeah. Executive will be aware that Waterloo Bollards Group have provided written representation to tonight's meeting. We'd like to thank the group for their valuable contribution and the challenge that they brought to phase 2. It has helped to deliver a bolder, better outcome for Acomb. In response to the points that they've raised, the report confirms the commitment to undertake a feasibility study on pedestrianisation, which is referenced in paragraphs 7, 17, 50, 51 and table 3, which we will commence the work on in the autumn. This will also ensure that their ideas raised about lay-by parking restrictions are considered as part of the range of options outlined in table 2. The long-term ambition for Acomb is to make this an area a more people-friendly space, which might include the pedestrianisation of Front Street. The recent engagement certainly supported that long-term vision. However, there are a large number of businesses that rely on the road for their deliveries, and residents who need their cars and close parking to the shops, who may not have a blue badge, and those who want to see the road use kept as is. The phase 2 scheme has been designed to be the first step on this journey to create a people-friendly space. Acomb has a tremendous community spirit. It's a hub of activity and it extends beyond the main shopping area. Phase 2 wants to capture this to help with removing barriers for more community events, to better connect local amenities, to unify the community under a single identity, and to work with the community to deliver a high quality mural. The ongoing debate about bollards has also identified polarising views from different groups, and again requires us to try and identify a balanced response. This will be achieved by finding alternative ways to protect the curb line, including the installation of wide, generous pedestrian crossings and planting and seating. all of which are future-proofed so that they don't need to be undone if pedestrianisation comes in the future. There is a lot more detail in the report, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine and Julia. It's great, and it's really fantastic to hear that there's been so much community engagement in this after what I think many didn't think was a very good scheme at all that we started out with. So we're really happy to see that. So can I see who would like to speak on this item, please? Councillor Fenton.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. It's good to see progress being made with the development of phase 2. As an Acomb resident, I'm aware of how passionately people feel about the area where they live. I'd like to thank Councillor Kilbane for the request for pre-decision scrutiny, which will be coming to CSMC in early September. I'm aware that there was a joint ward committee, which you mentioned was well attended, and that some of the proposals have been shared for discussion shortly before that meeting. I appreciate there are timescale challenges, but it'll be helpful to understand what opportunities, if any, there may be to gather any informal or formal feedback, including feedback received at the meeting, and how that might help inform tweaks to the proposals prior to the 24th of September decision session, including feedback from businesses on delivery and access arrangements, which you mentioned are part of the mix of considerations. One issue that may be already on your radar is the potential interaction between the phase 2 plans and the council's consultation on cafe licensing policies, which will be extended from the city centre into suburban and other shopping areas where businesses do put tables and chairs on their own land as part of adding to the vibrancy of the high street. So that may be something that it may already be being considered, but I think is a factor. There's mentioned in the report to the potential of adopting areas of public open space that are privately owned, and it would be helpful as the scheme progresses to have more information on that, not least because it may have lessons that can be learned for other parts of the city where there are public spaces that I'm sure many of us are harangued about by residents, and we have to say, well, I'm sorry, it's private land, there's nothing we can do about it. So there may be lessons that can be learned there. You mentioned traffic restriction orders. It would be helpful to have confirmation that any new orders that do arise as a result of the implementation of phase 2 will go through the usual process of advertisement, consultation, to get as another opportunity for businesses and members of the community to comment. You pointed out the sort of risk associated with illegal and inconsiderate parking and damage to paving and the creation of a less pedestrian friendly environment. So I welcome the reference to enforcement, and I know it's an issue that on which people will continue to want to engage. You mentioned the challenges that are presented by the deadlines that are set with the funding, and I know that was a particular factor with phase 1 as it is with phase 2. It'd be helpful to understand if you've had any indication from government, given that there has been a change of government, as to whether there's any likely appetite for deadlines previously imposed to be reconsidered. I think it was Councillor Rose mentioned at the beginning in public speaking some of the challenges posed by obviously having a hard deadline. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fenton. Councillor Kilbane?
Was there any questions in there that officers wanted to address while they're fresh in the mind, or do you want me to just carry on with mine?
I suppose just the technical point on TROs, they will absolutely go through the normal process, and that's one of the things we're asking for to go ahead. And just on feedback, we've captured notes from the ward committee. We're feeding those comments into the design work. The common room, who I mentioned, also did a session at the end of the ward committee where they collected post-it notes and comments, and they're going to be feeding that report into ours as well. So we'll pick that up. And as Julie mentioned, what a load of bollards ideas that have come into today's meeting, we'll take that away as well and consider that. So one of the reasons we wanted to come via scrutiny, and also to the public decision session is as well to give 2 more opportunities for speakers to come in public. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kilbane.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and huge thanks to the team. This has been an absolutely fantastic piece of work. Catherine and Julie, you're here, so you can take all the praise. But if you do talk to the rest of the team, do pass on our great thanks. I know we have already done that privately, but very happy to do that publicly. I did know from the statement from what a load of bollards that you know, you had the impossible task of trying to please everybody. Well, actually, you know, we haven't tried to please everybody. We've tried to find a common consensus and the grounds that most people are happy with, and that's been done through really deep public engagement. Now, it's not just the ward drop-in. It is the ward drop-ins on top of what's it, 900 responses, 5,000 bits of information. But I know that you were up there on Saturdays, hanging around that market, seeing what people were saying, and you know, and what they thought. So, you know, it's been a great piece of engagement with the community, and what we have found, well, just to give you an idea of how much this council listens. Our idea when we started off was like, well, what we need to do there is adopt that big load of pavement that's currently privately owned, so that we've got some flexibility with the space. That was our big idea. We went and saw the residents, told them that, and they said, no, we're not interested in that. What we want is a nice open space where we can have events, where we can have markets that have already started under this administration, that's a flexible space, that's pedestrian friendly, where there's blue badge parking, and all of those things were taken on board. And what you see in front of you in this report is the plan that was come from the residents of Acomb, Westfield, and also of Holgate. And I really want to praise the team, because the timescales that we're up against here are really tight, because we're trying to undo something that was previously done, and the timescales have remained the same. More of that later, but the timescales are tight, so the council has had to be agile and responsive while processing so much information. One of the reasons that, I mean, this decision could have been a couple of months previous, but we got so much feedback, you know, it took us quite a lot of time to process it, but we're really confident now that the plan that's going forward is the plan that the people of Acomb, Westfield and Holgate really want. Of course, there may be suggestions that come in, certainly from pre-decision scrutiny and also from residents, ward councillors, etc., that we will happily take on board when it comes to the decision session. But we've got to make this decision so we get the money out the door next year, otherwise it might not happen at all. So we will do that, but this is very much a first stage. You know, pedestrianisation is absolutely on the agenda, but it has to be done right as we do it, because there are people with access needs, there are businesses that need to have their deliveries, etc. And we need to take all that on board, because Acomb Front Street has become a livelier place in this last year, and we want it to become an even livelier place into the future. So just a couple of things to say. One is I am disappointed that Councillor Waller isn't here tonight, because the bollards that were put up on Acomb Front Street that arrived one morning like an invading army was taking occupation, actually was Councillor Waller's decision. I have publicly called for Councillor Waller to apologise, not only to the people of Acomb and Westfield and Holgate, but also to the taxpayers of York, because there's hundreds of thousands of pounds been wasted on a project that people never asked for and hated when it arrived. So if Councillor Waller would like to apologise to people, that would be greatly appreciated. However, you know, we have risen to the challenge. We have listened to what people have said, and we are turning this around. Acomb is a great place. It's going to be an absolutely fantastic place into the future. It's much better under Labour, and I really hope that this is the last time we talk bollards at one of these executive meetings, because I think we've all had enough of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kilbane. I hope everybody feels suitably motivated to go out there and do now. Great, right. Well, yeah, it's great to see this coming through, because I know it's been a huge amount of work from everybody, that's community and officers. So there are a lot of recommendations on here as well, aren't there? And they are on page 542 and page 543 at paragraphs 15, 16, 17 and 18. And so those are to approve the high level principles set out for phase 2,
and reconfirming executive's agreement to allocate 570,000 of UK Shared Prosperity Fund monies to Acomb, instruct officers to finalise project designs and costings on this basis. 17, delegate authority to approve the recommendations on the final costed scheme designed to be to the executive member for economy and culture to be made at a public decision session in September 2024. 18 is, given the tight spending timescales of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund funding, agree a number of practical next steps to enable officers to commence further necessary preparatory work. And so that's under items A, B, under there. So that's work be progressed on scope, design and procurement for seating, planting, wayfinding, etc., etc. And their delegations around that as well. B is approved commencement of work to enable the statutory consultation for 2 new traffic regulation orders, TROs, that are required for the proposed new disabled parking area at York Road and 20-mile-per-hour speed restriction in the main shopping area. And there's a delegation around that as well to the executive member for economy and culture in consultation with the executive member for transport when considering the final scheme in September. And then C, ask officers to commence discussions with Make It York to explore potential for amending the licence for Acomb Front Street Market granted under the Markets Charter for York to allow a possible future increase in the frequency of market activity in Acomb, and to delegate the authority to the executive member for economy and culture to basically go about that and future amendments to the licence for that market or those markets. So can I see those who are in favour of those recommendations? That's unanimously approved. Yes, we are really happy to see these developments move forward for Acomb Front Street, as will be the people of Acomb, Westfield and Holgate. So thank you everybody for all your work on it. It's been absolutely fantastic. I'm really glad to see it progress. Thank you for that. Thank you. Thanks for joining us this evening. Right, item number 12. Results of Air Quality Action Plan for consultation. So that's adoption of York's 4th Air Quality Action Plan. And we have Mike Southcombe and Andrew Gill, sorry, Andrew, with us. And so please go ahead, Mike and Andrew. Thank you.
Okay, a draft of York's 4th Air Quality Action Plan was consulted on between 22nd of November of last year and the 4th of February this year, alongside the City of York Council's local transport strategy. Reporting of this consultation has been somewhat delayed by the recent elections. AQAP4 has been produced as part of our statutory duties under the Environment Act 1995. AQAP4 outlines the actions we propose to take to further improve air quality in York over the next 5 years, to go beyond our statutory duties in meeting the health-based national air quality objectives in all areas, and to work towards meeting the much stricter World Health Organization guidelines. AQAP4 outlines 29 actions across 12 priority areas, including pollution from and via freight and deliveries, particularly to the city centre, buses, taxis, council vehicles, emissions from development, support for active travel, reducing emissions from solid fuel burning, and raising awareness of the impact of pollution upon people's health and enabling people to make decisions around lifestyle choices. Examples of this include our winter Fuel for Thought campaign to raise awareness of the impact of solid fuel burning on health and to provide information on alternatives to solid fuel burning. And just released this week is our air quality alert system to make those with respiratory, cardiac and other health conditions aware when there are episodes of poor air quality, so that they can make decisions about how to deal with those. The consultation itself, undertaken face-to-face, online and in writing, received 173 responses. Detailed comments are in the report, but in summary, 79% agreed that the council should continue to reduce air pollution. And between 67 and 87% supported every single one of our AQAP4 priority actions. The top 5 areas which all received over 80% support were reducing emissions from buses, monitoring air quality and giving the public more information about air quality information, reducing emissions from freight and delivery vehicles, reducing emissions from taxis, and reducing emissions from council vehicles. The executive is asked to review the comments received in relation to the AQAP4 consultation in Annex C, accept the amendments to the draft AQAP4 and responses made by officers in response to consultation feedback outlined in the report, again in Annex C, and to formally adopt the amended AQAP4 circulated with this report as CYC's 4th Air Quality Action Plan at Annex A, and to enable us to submit a final version of the document to DEFRA. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Andrew, would you like to say anything at this stage? No. Okay, thank you. Can I see who'd like to speak on this item, please? Councillor Fenton, do you want to go ahead? Thank you.
Thank you. Just very briefly, Chair, to thank officers for their work and for the report. It's good to see the previous interventions by previous administrations over a number of years in York are being built on in this latest plan. So thank you, and it's very welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Fenton. Councillor Kent.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to echo those thanks. I said at the last executive meeting when we accepted the air quality report that the air quality team is small but works incredibly hard and has made major impact on the health of York citizens, and I'm very grateful for that. I just wanted to respond briefly to Lynette Mills, who spoke about the action plan and felt that it was too weak and it felt solely on enforcement measures and e-vehicles. I know, having spoken to you and read it, that this is very much in conjunction with the local transport policy, which we plan and move into place plan, which we've also accepted this evening. And it's because the outcomes overlap, so they're very close. It's modal shift first. And yes, there's an accent on e-vehicles. Currently, they're only 6% of emission of the total traffic, but only where those journeys are essential. So modal shift is the main driver. But I also want to raise attention to the gains that have been made in our air quality across the city, and point out the really important work you're doing on domestic combustion and indoor air quality, which many areas have not yet got to grips with, but York actually really has. And particularly on the smaller particulates, it's 37% of those are from domestic combustion, whereas and a very small amount from traffic, or much smaller amount from traffic. And it's you highlighting that through the recent campaigns, and upcoming legislation might assist, but that's really welcome. So thank you very much for your hard work, and I'd like us to recommend adoption.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. So the recommendations are on page 662, paragraphs 18 and 19. And so we're asked to review comments received in relation to the consultation, accept the amendments to the draft AQAP4 and responses made by officers in response to consultation feedback, and to formally adopt the amended AQAP4 circulated with this report, which is Annex A, and submit a final version of the document to DEFRA. So can I see those who are in agreement with those recommendations? Thank you, everybody. Although that is approved unanimously as well. Right, thank you very much, Mike and Andrew. Really appreciate it, and thank you to your colleagues as well. And onwards and upwards with air quality, hey? Thank you. Right, final item. Goodness gracious, this has been a mammoth, hasn't it? And marathon. So we've got City of York trading. Item 13. City of York Trading Limited, creation of a new company for the provision
of agency workers, and I'd like to draw everybody's attention to the fact that that this report appears in the agenda supplement that was released earlier today. So, sorry, I can't remember your name, do I? Sophie Draper. So we've got Sophie Draper here to introduce the report that's within this agenda supplement, I assume, Sophie. Okay, please go ahead. Thank you. Mike. Oh, you need to turn the mic on. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
And speak directly into it.
Thank you. Just want to start by noting that following a request for clarification on option 1, as has been said, a revised report has been issued and circulated. So this report is around the proposed establishment of a new TECO company for the provision of agency workers to CYC. You may have seen similar reports recently for YPO and Veritao. So City of York Trading currently hold this contract to supply agency workers to CYC. CYT were established in 2011 and are wholly owned by CYC. They have 4 divisions: Work with York, Work with Schools, Work with Yorkshire, and Williams and Anthony. Since 2013, Work with York have held the contract to supply agency workers to CYC. The current contract runs until 2028 and was awarded under the TECL provisions. In order for TECL to apply, 3 conditions must be met, and these are detailed in paragraph 15. So CYC must exercise a similar degree of control over CYC as it does its own departments. 80% of the work undertaken by CYT must be for CYC, and there must be no direct private capital participation. So it's likely that we will fall out of TECL compliance in January 2025 due to a reduction in the percentage, so it will fall below 80%. This is due to an expansion of CYT's other divisions and a reduction in use by CYC. Some figures to demonstrate the reduction are from February 22 to February 24. In February 22, there was 368 billings. This reduced to 78, and the monthly bill reduced from 151k to 53k. We're therefore seeking to purchase and set up a new tech company for the supply of agency workers with Work with York underneath. The other 3 divisions would stay under CYT. If you look at page 11, there's a diagram that shows how that would work. Page 8 to 9 show the options. As discussed, option 1 has been amended to show that if we did not take any action, then eventually CYT would lose its TECL status and the council will be open to procurement challenge. The way to mitigate against this would be to go out to market with a competitive tender. CYT could put forward a bid, but there's no guarantee of their success. Option 2 would be to reduce CYT's external work in their other divisions to bring us back down to the 80% limit, but this is not considered financially viable. Option 3 would be to bring agency provision in-house. This would be a large-scale project with HR, finance, payroll, additional support required. There would also be additional pension and employment liabilities for the council. Therefore, option 4 is the recommended option to set up the new TECL company. The governance arrangements would mirror the existing company. The current contract would novate across and agency workers would transfer to the new company with the aim of them being paid for the first time in November 2024. There's also a need for an intra-company loan of £500,000 to be approved to cover the initial setup and the first month payroll. And there'd also be the opportunity to review the Articles of Association and Shareholders Agreement of the commercial company CYT. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. So would anybody like to speak on this item? Yeah, Councillor Fenton, do you want to go ahead? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's quite a lot to get your head around, but I think the amended option 1 provides a bit more explanation as to the impact of that option. I just wondered whether, I'm guessing there hasn't been time to update, so provide a detailed analysis of what the amended option 1 would entail. So I wonder whether, I suppose it's a question, would it make sense to provide that detailed analysis before making a decision? It's just not altogether clear to me whether the impact of the amended option 1 is already reflected in the accompanying information, or whether that would need to be provided in order for an informed decision to be made. But it's a question I would ask of officers. And
Before you answer on that, Sophie, can I ask if Karen Ball, do you want to come to the table to speak on this? You don't have to if you would prefer not to, but if it's helpful, then that may be useful. So Sophie, do you want to try and answer that question first, or I mean, is it more beneficial for Karen to speak? Which would you prefer?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the option 1 requirements in terms of tender would mean that City of York Trading would have to.
Can you speak up a little bit, please,
Sorry.
Karen? So pull it right close to you and oh, it's flashing. Perhaps we can use that one over there. Please go ahead.
Hopefully this one's better, is it? Oh, amazing. Yes, so obviously option 1 would require the City of York Trading, if we wanted to continue to provide the staff to the council, would have to go through a competitive tender process. We have been providing staff to the council, as Sophie said, since 2013. And if you've seen the other report, you'll see the kind of crucial things that we've been able to assist the council with over that time. Going out to private tender, you wouldn't have the same degree of control. There's no shareholders agreement, there's no shareholders meetings, there's no dividends, effectively. This is a company that's owned by the council. The council has a large degree of control and influence over the council and over the company, and the company is very responsive to the council, has regular meetings with officers, deals with members of the council staff every day, and can kind of instantly respond to what is needed. But literally, we got some bookings in on Friday and we had candidates ready on Monday morning. So, and that was for a 3-month assignment. It wasn't for a shift-based thing. I think it would be really difficult for you to easily get somebody else to do that work in that way.
Thank you, Karen. I'm just thinking it might be better for Sophie to speak first, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Lomas, if that's okay.
Yes, I was
Sophie?
just going to add that any procurement exercise would be quite a lengthy process, which would likely take us past January 2025 for the TECL compliance.
Expired, will likely be
Yes.
lost. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Lomas.
Yeah, thank you. I think we are here a victim of our own success in our strategy to reduce our reliance on agency staff, and that has been a very positive thing for the council, but it does create a risk for CYT, a successful company that we own. I appreciate, Councillor Fenton, that you're stepping in tonight for Councillor Eyre. However, this issue has been discussed at length for months with HR and legal officers at shareholder committee, which Councillor Eyre attends, and of course at the CYT board. So this is not something new that's just arrived on our desks this week. The amendment to the wording of option 1 just restates information that is contained elsewhere in the report, and that has been discussed again at length over a period of many months, and Councillor Eyre has been party to some of those discussions in his role as an observer at shareholder committee. The recommendation in this report is by far the most appropriate option. It ensures we remain in line with TECL rules while maintaining our interest in and benefit from this successful company. Nobody wants to sever our relationship with City of York Trading. They do a brilliant job for the council. They're starting to do brilliant work for partners across not just the city, but the region. And we want that. We want to support that success. And this is the mechanism that we do that we retain our benefit. We can still have the benefit of the service from City of York Trading. We can also retain benefit from ownership of a very successful company, but we remain compliant with important procurement related rules. I accept, Councillor Fenton, that you have stepped into this today at short notice. However, Councillor Eyre has had many opportunities to discuss this over a period of a long period of time, and I'm content that the clarification just restates information that was elsewhere in the report and has been in the various reports that we've seen on this matter over that period of time.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lomas. And yes, I think you've outlined that very well. And the recommendations are on page 3 of the what word am I looking for? I'm losing my words now. I've had too many this evening. Agenda supplement, that's it. And so paragraph 8, we've got A, B, C, D there. And so it says, further to Article 12, executive are asked to approve. Further to Article 12, the Council of City of York's Constitution approve the formation of new TCAL compliant company for the introduction of candidates for direct engagement and the provision of agency workers to Council of the City of York. Approve the novation of the Council of the City of York's current contract dated 7th September 2023 with the current TCAL company, City of York Trading Limited, to the new company. So my understanding is that means transfer. Yes, very good. I'm getting quite good at this, Dan, aren't I? C, approve City of York Trading Limited make an intercompany loan to the new company of up to £500,000 to cover the initial licensing, the first month payroll and HMRC costs for the new company, and pending payment of the initial invoice under the contract for the introduction of candidates, etc. D, delegate authority to the Director of Governance to negotiate, draft and conclude with City of York Trading Limited all necessary documentation linked to the formation of the new company, including but not limited to the new company's articles of association, shareholders agreement, the novation of the contract, and the intercompany loan between City of York Trading Limited and the new company. So that is taking on option 4, therefore, and approving option 4. I'm correct there, aren't I? Yes. So can I see those that are in agreement with those recommendations? So that is approved unanimously. Thank you very much, and thank you for waiting so long and the work that you've carried out in getting us to this point with this process. Thank you. Yes. Right, against all the odds, that is the final agenda item other than the urgent business, and I'm sorry to say to everybody that we haven't got any. So the meeting is closed, and thank you for everybody, to everybody for joining us this evening. And we will see you next time. Thanks very much. That's the end of the